Ethiopia's capital, Addis Ababa, where African leaders have convened for the 32nd African Union Summit, the heads of state have applauded progress made in conflict resolution and peaceful transition of power. They say the continent must build on the gains made to address the plight of refugees, returnees, and the internally displaced persons. CGTN's Grim Chala has been following up the events.
The 32nd summit opening session chose to emphasize the gains made in all sectors in Africa throughout the year 2018 and the beginning of 2019. First, President Paul Kagame of Rwanda, who served the AU as chair for 1 year, said Africa's efforts to achieve peace on its own has been encouraging. Kagame says the peace agreement between the warring sides of the Central African Republic is commendable.
We commend the recent peace agreement reached among the parties in the Central African Republic and thank the Commission and the member states involved in supporting this process. This accord must be implemented and respected.
The UN too saw huge progress in Africa. Its Secretary General Antonio Guterres appreciated the peaceful transition of power that is being witnessed across the continent.
I welcome the first peaceful transition of power in the Democratic Republic of the Congo since independence in 1960. In Mali, presidential elections were successfully organized in line with Mali's constitutional and legal frameworks. And in Madagascar, the peaceful presidential elections are testament to the responsibility of national stakeholders and to our close cooperation. Excellencies, it is in this context of renewed hope that we increase our mutual support to peace operations in Africa.
Be it as it may, the African Union still has challenges it must face, and that is why this year's theme, Refugees, Returnees and Internally Displaced Persons, was selected. The AU Commission wants member states to fully be on board to assure the operationalization of the African Humanitarian Agency.
The Commission of African Union would like our proclamations of faith on this theme, in fact, be the death knell of all forms of apathy, lack of action, and even resignation in the face of the horrors of this unbearable scourge. Indeed, we need to deal resolutely with the root causes of this phenomenon, parallelly with the speeding up of the operationalization of the African Humanitarian Agency.
This summit also welcomed President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi of Egypt as the new chairperson of the Union, replacing President Paul Kagame of Rwanda.
Egypt will spare no effort in moving forward on this path that we have embarked on together for the institutional, structural and financial reform of the Union.
The summit continues on Monday too, with a new chairperson in place and important agenda items on the tables of leaders. Analysts expect stronger resolutions to address issues of refugees and peace and security, among other results. Grumjala CGTN, Addis Ababa, Ethiopia.
The newly elected African Union Chair, President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi, addressed the summit, saying he would prioritize security in the continent.
In addition to the issue of forced displacement, which is likely to remain a central theme at the two-day summit, members also elected Egypt's President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi as chairperson of the Union.
Our work must continue to improve peace and security in Africa in a holistic and sustainable manner that is strategic for our continent. And diplomacy will remain one of our top priorities at the African Union, and we will endeavor to maintain security cooperation, peace and stability regionally and across the continent, so that we are able to respond to the various needs of our continent.
Al-Sisi's election marks the end of Rwandan President Paul Kagame's one-year tenure that championed AU reform and stronger leadership.
Counterterrorism requires the identification of those who support and finance it and combating them collectively. While we are aware of the difficulty and complexity of the struggle, this remains the only appropriate way to uproot terrorism and eradicate it.
The incoming AU leadership is faced with persistent priority issues with security and conflict topping the bloc's agenda. The summit concludes on Monday with nations agreeing to silence all guns by 2020 and root out all those linked to terrorism. Beryl Oro, CGTN.
And for the latest on that summit, we're joined in Addis Ababa by CGTN's Gurum Chala. Gurum, day 2 of the AU summit. Can you tell us more of what is coming out of those talks?
Good afternoon, Peninah, from the Ethiopian capital, Addis Ababa, where the African Union Heads of State Summit is on its second day. And discussions are continuing on several agendas, and we can tell you that peace and security issues of governance, and also the issue of the African Union reform has been deliberated on. Member states through their heads of state and governments have been talking about these agenda items, and we are expecting that decisions will be made later today. On the other hand, of course, on the theme itself, refugees, returnees and internally displaced persons, discussions are continuing here. As you know, a robust decision must be made so that a problem of refugees and returnees can be mitigated. So, as I said earlier, we are also expecting stronger resolutions in this regard. Perhaps to tell us more on the theme, we are now joined by Leah Vaudran. She is a senior research consultant at the Institute for Security Studies based in Pretoria, South Africa. Leah, thank you very much for joining us on Africa Live. Now, let's just begin by talking about the theme itself of refugees, returnees, and internally displaced persons. What role do you think member states, through their leaders, can play to mitigate this challenge?
I think a big role. I think it's a very apt topic, and it was quite moving to hear Musa Faki Mohammed, the chair of the commission, saying he was a refugee for 8 years of his life. And so it really brought home the issue of refugees. 7-8 million are some of the figures we've heard here of refugees, and then many more internally displaced because of crises in the Horn, in the Sahel, people fleeing terrorism in Nigeria, etc. So there are two ways to look at it. On the one hand, handling the issue of refugees, partnering with the UN High Commission for Refugees. We heard Antonio Guterres, who used to be, of course, chair of the UNHCR, speaking also very eloquently here at the summit on that topic. There are conventions of the AU, OAU conventions that not all the states have ratified, that protects refugees, ensures that they get education, that some asylum seekers, for example, are allowed to work in countries where they are. So generally in Africa, refugees are well treated and welcomed by often poor communities who see when there's a crisis in one country, hundreds of thousands of refugees coming in. But African states can do a lot to help those people. But then, of course, the theme also says sustainable solutions to forced displacement in Africa. And that is where, as you mentioned, the peace and security issues come in, because you have to look at the root causes, the conflicts that are pushing people to be refugees.
Leah, you know, the African Union makes lots of decisions every time there are assembly of the state. But then again, implementation is an issue. Do you think the African Union is fulfilling based on its mandate?
I think it's very difficult for the African Union with 55 member states, heads of state from diverse regions, some major countries and smaller countries, to actually, based on consensus, come to decisions to move the continent forward. And I know there's skepticism amongst ordinary citizens. What does the AU really mean for us? But there are definitely issues, as we've seen even at this summit, that will make a difference. The Continental Free Trade Area that will now enter into force in July at the next summit in Niamey is a huge achievement. What we're waiting for now is free movement of people. President Paul Kagame in his speech yesterday mentioned the African passport, which I think will be a concrete sort of manifestation of this, where the African Union can really deliver, on citizens' issues. But there are, I think, on another level, decisions that are being made on governance. As you mentioned, for the first time, there's going to be a report tabled on the state of governance, and many Africans are concerned about human rights, free and fair elections. We have countries on the continent today where internet has just been cut off, and that's a major thing for ordinary people. So there's a long way to go, but I personally feel, having experienced the AU now for the last 15 years or more, there's definitely progress.
Of course, the progress is there. We can see it. The challenge is also there. Liesl Lo Vaudran, thank you very much for joining us here on Africa Live. So the heads of state, the 32nd edition of the Assembly is still going on as we speak.
In a week until the presidential election in Nigeria, a local government office of the Independent National Electoral Commission in Plateau State, North Central Nigeria, has been completely destroyed by fire. The latest incident is the second in about a week after a similar fire in a state office in Abia, southeast Nigeria, burnt over 300 permanent voters' cards. CGTN's Samson Omale reports.
The fire, which completely burned down the Independent National Electoral Commission office in Kwampan area of Plateau State early Sunday morning, will create a huge logistic problem for the electoral body in the state. Over 5,000 voting cubicles, hundreds of ballot boxes, power and election forms and stamps were lost in the blaze. The fire started when the security guard attached to the complex attempted to destroy obsolete equipment and material evacuated from one of the stores to make room for Saturday's election materials. The IC spokesman in the state confirmed that an investigation has been launched into the incident.
Intelligence officers and other operatives from the force headquarters are already in Kwampan trying to investigate the root cause of the problem. For now, we cannot arrive at any conclusion as to the actual cause of the incident. So we wait for the police reports before we come out with any major statement concerning that. But as we speak, the headquarters in Abuja is already making efforts to see what they can do to salvage the situation.
Several people whose permanent voter cards got burnt in the inferno may now not be able to participate in Saturday's election. Authorities say they cannot confirm whether the fires at the local government offices are an attempt to sabotage the elections. Samson Omale, CGTN, Jos, Nigeria.
Let's get more details on that incident. Phil Haza is live for us in Abuja. Phil, just give us more details on what exactly happened.
Oh, thank you, Peninah. We woke up to the news over the weekend of how that fire engulfed a local government area, or one of the offices, Electoral Commission's offices in a local government area in Plateau State, Jos to be precise. Now, over 6,000 or close to 6,000 permanent voter cards were destroyed. The cause of the fire, mainly the concern of what we know so far, is that it was caused by negligence or carelessness from security personnel in the building. We also know that quite a number of materials, election materials, were destroyed. But good enough, the card reader, most of the machines that read the cards were not at the office at the time. They were at the headquarters in the state. There's a statement that has been released by the Electoral Commission notifying the security agencies, to ensure that something is done to protect these offices. Also, the Electoral Commission says that it's doing its best to see how they can get the numbers of people that may be disenfranchised, people that were affected by this incident, and also see how they can reprint their PVCs. But of course, a lot of people have said, how possible would that be? Plateau State It has a population of 3.5 people thereabout. They also have about 2.5 registered voters. So about 5,000 cars destroyed 5 days to the election. Actually, today, the 11th of February, is the last day nationwide for collecting PVC. So when will these cards be printed? When will they be distributed to the people affected? Will it be extended for that state in particular? These are some of the things that we're still trying to wrap our heads around.
So, Phil, we're counting down days to the general election. As campaigns wind down, what are the key issues that are shaping up this election?
Well, quite a number of developments. We've seen the full list of candidates released by the Electoral Commission, talking about the presidential candidate and the gubernatorial candidates, because the elections for presidential is on February 16th, this Saturday, and then March 2, which is next month. We've also seen several campaign activities, the last round of campaign activities, gather momentum towards, just as the election builds or gets closer. On Saturday was the APC rally in Lagos State, that's southwest Nigeria. It was a massive rally with quite a number of people in attendance. That same day was supposed to be the rally for PP in the nation's capital, Abuja, but in the last minute it was turned down. We're actually there physically, and quite a number of security presence was there to ensure that there was no activity from the opposition, the People's Democratic Party. But majorly right now is, we see both candidates of the ruling APC and the PDP, that's President Muhammadu Buhari and his major opponent Atiku Abubakar, communicating their manifestos, their mandate to their supporters, to the people of Nigeria, saying how that, for example, the APC is seeking for more time to consolidate on their work in terms of fighting insecurity, tackling corruption, and boosting the economy. And then also the PDP saying majorly that they are out to create jobs. 3 million jobs every year, looking at doubling the economy, the size of the economy to $1 trillion by by 2025. Quite a number of things saying that the security is in dilapidated state. They're hoping to bring that back, to reforms and all of that. So we're seeing heated, communication there, increased communication in terms of their manifestos and mandate on how that they hope to deliver if given the ticket on February 16th. We're 5 days already, and indeed it's all politics in Nigeria.
All right, Phil, thank you very much for that. We have a live in Abuja. And staying in Nigeria, the family of Leah Sharibu, who was abducted by Boko Haram, is once again calling for her release. Her mother, Rebecca Sharibu, has pleaded with the Nigerian government to do everything in its power to rescue her daughter. The 15-year-old girl was among the 110 Dapchi schoolgirls kidnapped in February last year. She was not released after refusing to renounce her Christian faith. Since then, several campaigns have been created asking the government to protect schools and rescue those in Boko Haram captivity.
It's almost a year she's been in captivity. I'm begging government not to forget the promises they made to us. The president called me on the phone and assured me that he will do everything possible for Leah's return. And with God's help, she will come back.
Leah's story is an incredible example of standing up for your faith. And she did this even in the face of captivity and danger. When she was asked to renounce Christ, she refused. And that bravery and integrity is what has inspired the Leah Foundation to be advocating for girls like Leah and empowering them today.
You're watching Africa Live. Let's take a quick break. Straight ahead. Ivorian president calls for accountability for post-poll deaths days after Gbagbo's acquittal. And rivalry between ISIL and al-Shabaab in Somalia worries country's international partners.
How will your world change today? What happens here? What happens there? Or what you make happen for yourself? If it matters to you, it matters to us too. Your stories are the stories that need to be told. Africa Live, find your voice. Africa Live, find your voice.
Cote d'Ivoire's President Alassane Ouattara has refused to comment on the acquittal of his predecessor, Gbagbo, at the International Criminal Court. He insists that it is an ongoing trial and investigations are continuing. ICC judges acquitted Gbagbo and his aide, Charles Blegood, on charges of crimes against humanity. The crimes were said to have risen from a wave of violence after disputed elections in the West African nation in 2010. About 3,000 people died and 5,000 were displaced following the conflict. Gbagbo stands as the first former head of state to go to trial at the ICC. He is currently living in Belgium after his conditional release pending a possible prosecution appeal. Let's now head to Algeria, where the ruling FLN party has picked incumbent President Abdelaziz Bouteflika as its flag bearer for the upcoming April 18 elections. 81-year-old Bouteflika has been in office since 1999. However, he is rarely seen in public since suffering a stroke, which confined him to a wheelchair. His state of health has generated debate as to whether he would vie for a fifth term. While announcing his candidature, the party leadership said the choice was based on the stability and economic success that Algeria has enjoyed under President Bouteflika.
It is my announcement that the National Liberation Front Party, FLN, has nominated President Abdelaziz Bouteflika as its candidate for the April presidential elections.
Because of his valuable achievements, the gains he has made to the country, I think it is natural that Bouteflika will run for a fifth term. We as the National Liberation Front support his candidacy for the presidency.
In Somalia, rivalry between militant groups ISIL and al-Shabaab has worried the country's international partners. The two rival militant groups are fighting for dominance, with each seeking to make huge amounts of money through forceful taxation. CGTN's Abdulaziz Bilu has more from Mogadishu.
Unlike in Iraq and Syria, ISIL is slowly gaining new grounds in Somalia, with several foreign fighters among its ranks. The militant group is also seeking to defeat al-Shabaab, an al-Qaeda-affiliated group that has waged an armed insurgency in the country for over a decade now. And for the past months, the rival groups have clashed in northeastern Somalia, in a relatively stable autonomous region known as Puntland, a conflict that has caught many by surprise.
It started tit-for-tat war between the two groups, and until 2 months ago, where Daesh have started to threaten the big businesses in Mogadishu to pay taxes. Shabaab then realized if they don't deal with them, it's going to affect their income, B, the influence on the ground.
US drones have targeted both al-Shabaab and pro-ISIL militants in these mountains, but that hasn't deterred the rival groups from imposing harsh economic sanctions among local businesses in government-controlled areas. Pro-ISIL militants made headlines in Somalia in 2015 after seizing Kandala, an ancient port town, before they were overpowered by the regional army, and since then it has resulted to guerrilla attacks. In 2017, pro-ISIL militants made global headlines by carrying out its first suicide attack on a security checkpoint in Bosaso, a port city from which it continues to target big business enterprises and government officials.
The government needs to, look at us like that. They are only one coin in two sides, and to have a comprehensive strategy where if you focus only one, the other one might be the alternative that the jihadists can move on.
American aerial firepower has increased since US President Donald Trump took office 2 years ago. 15 airstrikes so far this year has claimed hundreds of the group's fighters, including one last month that killed 52 militants on the outskirts of the port city of Kismayo in southern Somalia. Last year, al-Shabaab spokesman termed ISIL as a cancer and a disease, the one that must be uprooted. For now, the al-Qaeda affiliate is the dominant force across the country and beyond, but analysts warn that ISIL is working hard to build up its presence after losing badly in the Middle East. Abdulaziz Bilo, CGTN, Mogadishu, Somalia.
Thousands of Iranians have taken part in a mass rally in the capital Tehran to mark the 40th anniversary of the 1979 Islamic Revolution. Iran organizes the event on this day every year to highlight the overthrow of the Western-backed Shah 4 decades ago. It's known locally as the 10 Days of Dawn, and it commemorates the return of Supreme Leader Ayatollah Khamenei. There is also a huge display of domestically developed military equipment, including drones, missiles, bombs, and weapons. It's a day which many Iranians look forward to every year.
Our people realize that the reason no enemy has been able to set foot on our land over the past 40 years is because of this strength.
The strength of it is striking, and these military devices are manufactured by our youth. We are proud of those people who made these devices to safeguard our national security.
In Venezuela, President Nicolas Maduro appeared on state television Sunday saying his country is ready to defend itself against what he called the imperialist United States government of Donald Trump.
Its threats are forcing us to prepare, really, to defend the right to peace in our country, to defend the dignity of Venezuela, its sovereignty, its independence, to defend the right to live in the 21st century, as a free, sovereign nation, as a free people, as a sovereign people.
On to the UK, where Prime Minister Theresa May has rejected a Brexit compromise offer from the opposition Labour Party. The proposal would have seen the country remain in some form of customs union with its European neighbours, even after leaving the EU. The bloc had urged May to accept the offer, but the British leader objected on grounds that it would prevent the UK from determining an independent trade policy. The move has fueled speculation that May's government has no intention to present lawmakers with a fresh Brexit plan before the end of the month. Staying in Europe, tens of thousands of people have taken to the streets in central Madrid, demanding the resignation of Spanish Prime Minister Pedro Sánchez and new general elections. The Spanish government on Sunday's demonstration involved some 45,000 people, while the organizers put the number at 200,000. The protest took place ahead of a highly sensitive trial at Spain's Supreme Court for 12 Catalan separatists, which gets underway on Tuesday. At a rally, Sánchez accused organizer parties of creating divisions in the country.
When I was head of the opposition, there were 2 illegal referendums in Catalonia, a unilateral declaration of independence, and an Article 155 had to be applied as a consequence. To defend the unity of Spain, and above all to re-establish the constitution in Catalonia, I always sided, as leader of the opposition, with the government, with the Popular Party.
This is Africa Live. Coming up in business news. Teachers' unions in Zimbabwe call off strike after reaching a deal with the government. And Egypt's economic priorities as it assumes chairmanship of the African Union.
You don't find the stories of North Africa by sitting on the sidelines.
You got to get out, go there, and you'll find them. In the bazaars of Casablanca. Among the crowds in Cairo.
Who come to visit Cairo, the ancient capital of Egypt.
Along the waters of the Nile. Along the sands of the Sahara. No one else will take you where we can in North Africa. No one else will show you what it's all about. CGTN, see the difference.
Africa Live. Find your voice.
Teachers in Zimbabwe have called off the strike, which began on February 5th over pay and will return to work by Tuesday. Teachers' unions met Education Minister Paul Mavima in Harare and agreed on a return to work formula. Teachers, like other public sector workers, are demanding US dollar salaries and an increase in allowances to cushion them against soaring inflation and economic hardship. According to the labor unions, the strike was marred by intimidation from military officials and politicians. There are more than 100,000 public sector teachers in Zimbabwe. Unions say 80% of them are on strike. According to the Zimbabwe Teachers Association and the Progressive Teachers Union, failure by the government to meet their demands would see teachers going back on strike. In Egypt, the annual consumer price inflation has declined to 12.2% in January 2019 compared to 17% in January 2018. In December, the annual inflation level reached 11.1% compared to 22.3% in the same month of 2017. According to the Central Agency for Public Mobilization and Statistics, inflation accelerated by 0.8% in January, recording 298.8 points compared to 296.5 points in December 2018. Cupmas attributed the hike in inflation on a monthly basis to the increase of some commodity prices, as vegetable prices rose by 3.9% and cereals and bread by 1.8%. The International Monetary Fund expects inflation to decline to 20.9% in 2018 compared to 23.5% in 2017, anticipating it to reach 14% this year and 7% in 2023. Inflation has surged since the flotation of the Egyptian pound in 2016, reaching a high record level in July due to energy subsidy cuts. Still in Egypt, the country has taken over the one-year presidency of the African Union at the AU summit in Addis Ababa. Yasser Hakim looks at what Egypt hopes to achieve on the economic front as the new head of the AU.
In his latest statements before leaving for Addis Ababa, Egyptian President Abdel Fattah el-Sisi stressed that the African economy is one of his main priorities. Cairo hopes the long-sought dream of a continental free trade area will be adopted during its term. So far, only 18 out of 49 members have ratified the treaty. It needs 22 states to be put into effect.
Unfortunately, the inter-African trade at present is only 14%. The rest is still be done with the former colonial powers and others. We'd like to increase this area to have all Africa included and to encourage partners in order to have an agreement with this continental grouping for investment, finance, technical assistance, transfer of technology, and this will allow more interactive between African peoples, not only the business people.
For many businessmen, the continent lacks vital components to upscale its investments.
Africa needs a lot of energy in the coming years, and infrastructure especially, and Egypt has already done major steps in this respect. Since 2014 till now, Egypt has gone a long way in different infrastructure projects and renewable energy. So we can make use of Egypt's experience in this respect to different African countries.
Egypt will also resume outgoing AU chair Namibia's efforts in restructuring the AU setup and membership regulations to raise more sources of income for the organization. However, experts believe the main target should always be the African citizen.
Africa for a long time now is suffering from the poverty problem. Many Africans are still under the poverty line, recognized by the international community. That's why we'd like to devise a plan in order to make the governments concerned encourage involvement of women, youth, and the private sector, and so on, in order to uplift this poverty, which is affecting the social fabric of many countries.
This is the fourth time that Egypt resigns over the AU, and most experts believe it's a pivotal period. Africa needs to develop its economies that have lagged far behind other continents. Yas Hakim for CGTN, Cairo.
The head of the International Monetary Fund says trade between the UK and the European Union will become more difficult whatever the outcome of Brexit negotiations. This week, UK Prime Minister Theresa May is expected to announce that she will call for another parliamentary debate on the Brexit deal by the 27th of this month. As the clock ticks down to Britain's scheduled exit on March 29th, May continues her efforts to persuade the EU to change the deal that was agreed between London and Brussels late last year. The agreement was overwhelmingly rejected by the UK Parliament in January.
Whether it ends well, whether there is a smooth exit even by custom unions as predicated by some, or whether it's as a result of a brutal exit on March 29th without extension of notice, it's not going to be as good as it is now, because there will be additional friction, because there will be unnecessary, there will be required procedures, there will be lines.
A new round of trade talks between China and the US is set to get underway. The US working team has arrived in Beijing, and vice ministerial level talks are expected to be held from Monday to Wednesday. The talks go up to the next level on Thursday and Friday when Chinese Vice Premier Leah joins US Trade Representative Robert Lighthizer and Treasury Secretary Steven Mnuchin. Meanwhile, the United States is also trying to force the EU into agreeing to a new trade deal. US President Donald Trump is doing that by threatening the EU with a 25% tariff on auto imports. The US Commerce Department is scheduled to report by next Sunday on whether auto imports constitute a threat to national security. Observers expect the findings to be affirmative. Trump then will have 90 days to impose tariffs or a quota. That means European car makers such as BMW, Mercedes and Volkswagen could be hit hard. It's not clear yet how the European Commission would react. Reports say the EU could retaliate with tariffs on more than $20 billion worth of American goods, but some say it's unlikely the EU would take such strong action, with darkness looming ahead for the European economy. The visit of the Deputy Prime Minister and Foreign Minister of Turkmenistan to Tunisia has been described as historic. The official affirmed his country's willingness to intensify bilateral consultations to boost cooperation with Tunisia, saying that it is essential to conclude as soon as possible more agreements on trade, economy, scientific research, tourism and education. Adnet Shawashi has more.
Turkmenistan's Deputy Prime Minister and Foreign Minister Razit Meredo has visited Tunisia at the invitation of Foreign Minister Khamis Jhinewi. It is the first visit of a Foreign Minister from Turkmenistan to Tunisia since the establishment of diplomatic relations between the two countries in November 1992.
First of all, I would like to say that it was a very great honor for me to mention about the very high-level political cooperation between Turkmenistan and Republic of Tunisia, particularly in the framework of the United Nations. During many, many years, the Republic of Tunisia supported Turkmenistan and its initiatives, and particularly Republic of Tunisia was one of the first countries in the world recognized the independence of Turkmenistan.
Two memoranda of understanding were signed between Tunisia and Turkmenistan in the political and diplomatic fields.
We signed two important documents, and we agreed to continue this work, and I very strongly believe that in the nearest future we will prepare some very important agreements, memorandums regarding the expansion of our cooperation in different fields, not only in the political and diplomatic spheres, in trade, economic, and science, tourism, education, and others.
For his part, Jhinewi indicated that the visit of the head of diplomacy of Turkmenistan to Tunisia is historic.
وإن كانت لهم علاقات تاريخية
This visit has helped establish relations between the two sisterly countries and identify cooperation opportunities in trade, investment, energy and tourism fields. Turkmenistan has tremendous potential, particularly in the cultural and economic fields. We also agreed to avoid double taxation and to protect and develop investments between the two countries.
Rashid Meredov was received at Carthage Palace. He hailed Tunisia's key role in establishing security and stability in the region. Tunisian President Beji Qaid Essebsi highlighted during the meeting with Meredov the importance of capitalizing on the factors of historical and civilizational rapprochement to establish economic relations between Tunis and Ashgabat. Adnan Shabashi, CGTN, Tunis.
You're watching Africa Live. Coming up after the break, we see how a group of artists in Cairo are causing a sensation by reviving the golden age of Arab songs.
Join us in Global Business and see Africa through our eyes.
Africa Live. Find your voice.
To Egypt now, and songwriters and artists are holding steadfast to their heritage as they fight to maintain historical music's flavor and meaning. The country is often dubbed as the Hollywood of Arabic music as it enjoys dominance over the industry.
Ahmed Adel passionately performs an Egyptian classic, evoking a nostalgia for past Arabic songs. Adel performs regularly at the 100-year-old Arab Music Institute. Egypt, a cultural powerhouse in the Arab world, has long enjoyed a booming music industry.
The word heritage has a lot of different meanings and aspects. The songs that date back to 50 years are considered a kind of heritage.
The heritage singers are our destiny and our heritage, and we admire them until now. They may not be from this era, but their songs still remain until now.
Cairo has often been listed as the Hollywood of Arabic music, but in the 1990s, Gulf countries vying for cultural dominance emerged as rivals to Egypt's music industry. A 2011 uprising in Egypt that plunged the country into political and economic chaos saw a downturn in the domestic music industry. Yet the Egyptian metropolis remains alive with the sound of music.
We keep saving our heritage in order not to lose our identity. That's why heritage bands are keen to perform heritage songs. We perform songs in the spirit of the opera house.
Music production companies are also seeking to preserve the country's music heritage. Sono Cairo, an historic record company, is betting on the internet to capture the interest of younger generations.
We made good usage of all the company's heritage production and converted it into digital. We added background music to all our heritage songs and posted them on YouTube.
What we don't like too much in the heritage songs is the background music. So we try to perform the songs with our own background music. We mix the songs with a rock or jazzy sound.
With its wide variety of classics, the record label has struck deals with YouTube and other mobile application companies to keep this heritage alive.
If we don't develop our production, we will not survive. And this is a major problem for everyone. If you don't keep up with the new technologies, you will disappear.
Rising artists from places such as Lebanon, Morocco and the United Arab Emirates also harness millions of views on YouTube, usually singing in their own dialects. Egypt's music scene remains vibrant, with the country's culture at the hem of the industry. Laura Walubengo, CGTN.
Meanwhile, in Burkina Faso, an exhibition on pre-digital era music technology has been on display since February 2nd. The exhibition, which will end on the 16th of this month, aims to bring the history of Burkina Faso's music industry to life in the community.
Old is gold is what exhibitors here were trying to promote. From vinyl records, cassettes, and CDs, visitors got a chance to connect with the past. Organized by Sedoni Production, a pioneering company in the music industry in Burkina Faso, the exhibition was also an opportunity to discuss the impact of these older music technologies on artistic productions.
10 or 15 years ago, everyone swore by these methods. They were tapes and CDs. CDs were something luxurious, by the way, while tapes were more popular for the ordinary customer. Nowadays, to see that all this is obsolete and that it is no longer being done at the moment, one can only think of how time flies. But at the same time, it's a connection to the past. So it's a part of our history that we're rewinding.
Back in the days, things were a lot harder. It wasn't easy at all to be an artist. You could start a career one day, but it took a long time to become a certified artist. Today, things are different. You can even become an artist right here, right now. You can make music today and start using it tomorrow.
The Burkina authorities here pointed toward the importance of older technologies in the popularization of cultural values while encouraging growth of the digital age.
Music is a key component of our identity. Thus, so is everything that contributes to it and plays a major role in the preservation of Burkinabe culture. Without these older tools, music wouldn't be. When we shift to the new digital era, we have a duty to remember those who engaged and invested in this field. That is somewhat obsolete today. They have paved the way to technological innovation. They must also adapt to this new climate.
In Burkina Faso, Sedoni Productions' first tape was manufactured in December 1998 in a tape factory which still holds great historical value. However, with the current trends overtaking the industry, it is easy to see how the evolution in technology has affected the production and delivery of music. Brian Toussaint, CGTN.
In South Africa, locals and the overseas Chinese in Cape Town have been treated to some mind-blowing performances. This as the Spring Festival celebrations continue. A visiting Chinese art group held an event to promote cultural exchanges between China and South Africa. Themed Festival of Spring, the troupe displayed an array of diverse musical and dance traditions of Chinese origin. The troupe is led by Henan Performing Arts Group and the monk troupe of martial arts from Dengfeng Shaolin Temple in Henan Province. The event was jointly organized by the Overseas Chinese Office of the State Council and the returned Overseas Chinese Federation of China. From South Africa, the team will tour the United Arab Emirates and Kenya.
I think all the performances were very good. Firstly, I must say Happy New Year to the Chinese. It was fantastic, and the Festival of Spring was fantastic. It unifies South Africa, China, the relationships, and it was very colorful, very pleasant, very talented. Fantastic.
It was a wonderful performance. The singers were really, really amazing, and the Shaolin performance was beautiful. The costumes of the girls were just absolutely fabulous, and I wish everybody a very happy new year in the year of the pig, much prosperity and happiness.
The Grammys Gala in Los Angeles on Sunday was a night for girl power, with many of the major awards given to females. British singer-songwriter Dua Lipa took home the Grammy for Best New Artist. Cardi B accepted the Best Rap Album Award for Invasion of Privacy. Her got the nod for Best R&B Album with their self-titled success, Her. Golden Hour by Casey Musgraves won Album of the Year at the 2019 awards, and Lady Gaga and Bradley Cooper took home the 2019 Grammy for Best Pop Duo Group Performance on Sunday with their song Shallow. You're watching Africa Live. Coming up in sports. South Africa's Special Olympics team preparing for the Games to be held in March in Abu Dhabi.
Africa, where champions are made, records are broken, legends are born. We're there for every goal, for every knockout, for every step of the way.
Match Point, only on CGTN.
Africa Live. Find your voice.
We begin with English football news, where